Alexander of Macedon by Harold Lamb. We have 3 parts, 17 chapters. Oh no, 22 chapters. Okay. He lifted the civilized world out of one groove and set it in another. He started a new epoch. Nothing again could be as it had been. W. W. Tarn, Cambridge Ancient History, Volume 6. And we have a map here. It's not exactly, it's more mythical in its layout, but the passage of the Chariot of the Sun. When we hear of him, first he was alone, not that he was left to himself, because people always kept near to him. He was alone in what he wanted most to do, and alone in his thoughts. The thing he valued most was the copy of the Iliad, or Troy tale, which he read at night until he knew much of it by heart. After reading it, he put it under his wooden headrest for the remainder of the night. So he thought a lot about Achilles, and one of the tutors nicknamed him Achilles. And the time just before sleep, when the lamp was taken away, the boy traveled with the heroes of the book across the sea and landed upon a strange coast in the east. That parchment book was something that belonged to himself, that he did not need to share with kinsmen, companions, tutors, or even the Theban veteran, the tutors who drilled him in the Greek and such things as rhetoric and logic had been selected by his mother, Rigid Leonidas. The governor of the tutors was kinsman on his mother's side. They filled the hours of the day for him, calling him before the first light to run with the foot slave over a measured course before he tasted food. A run before daybreak, chanted the tutor, at the startling point gives you a good breakfast. A light breakfast gives you a good dinner. The boy ran 1,000 paces with knees bent in the lope of the mountain folk, out to the cemetery. At the turning point, he could see the white marble of the shrine upon which had been carved the words, "I am an immortal God, mortal no more." They used the pillar as a marker and started back on the other side of it, racing uphill to the city. The boy went eagerly because of the streak of the sunrise along the mountain ridge meant that the Chariot of the Sun was rising out of its stable in the distant ocean and starting on its course across the sky. When clouds moved over the mountains, he thought he could see the heads of the horses uptossed at the finish line by the first tree of the palace. He lengthened his stride and strove ahead of the slave runner. He would not let himself be beaten, nor did the slave dare to outdistance the boy. Now, whatever the circumstance, I don't believe that slaves should be treated in such a way that, they can't succeed in their tasks, or just beaten without at least doing something wrong, right? When he went in and anointed his hands by the embers of the altar fire, he felt as if he were still greeting the racing sun. There in the east, it was soaring through the heights of the entities who knew no darkness and never slept. He took incense from the casket, scattering it recklessly over the embers, waiting for the vapor to rise and the glow to warm his cold face, muttering to the Godfather, to his son born of the horned serpent, "May they watch over us and protect us." Well, except the horned serpent part. Doesn't that sound like a familiar aspect of mythology? Same thing with the divinized hero. spoken in the darkness, these words would have been empty patter. Now, in the growing light, they were spoken to those far-off benefactors, those mighty souls, patient and watchful. That was how he thought of the shining fellowship of the entities of Zeus. Zeus actually doesn't have to be personified. That's the thing. People say, what about Zeus? It's like, well, Zeus, you don't have to, linguistically, that doesn't even have to go into the area of a male divinity, let alone the other stuff. And fleet-flying Aphrodite, who had whispered counsel to Achilles. Now, there are other Greek terms of divinity, or supposed gods and goddesses that are likewise, but I'm not necessarily going to go into each of those, but as we go along. When he heaped incense too plentifully on the glowing altar, kinsman Leonidas touched his arm, speaking in a dry voice, "Powdered myrrh is not sand to be thrown away by the handful." At such times the boy felt choked, with the tightness pressing around his brain, and he could not speak. Frankincense and myrrh came a long way, it was true, from the Araby. They had little enough of incense in the house, but they had appointed him to make sacrifice. How could he take a pinch of the precious stuff to make a gesture of offering in order to make the incense last a proper number of days? It seemed to him that he had to offer all of it or nothing, yet he could not explain his feeling about that to the kinsman. It was not easy to talk with his mother's kinsmen. They told him what he must do, and he did it. The boy understood why Leonidas would not allow him to run with his father's racehorses on the new track, saying that mountain folk, like the Macedonians, had to climb mountains. Leonidas would not let him eat corn that was finely ground and softened with milk, explaining that the entrails of beer and the marrow of boar would give him courage, which he lacked, and perhaps the angry stomach. Every day after the morning sacrifice, Leonidas searched the cupboards in the boy's room to see if his mother had smuggled in honey cakes or bowls of milk wine. As often she did. The kinsmen were doing their duty by him and training him like a Spartan, because they said he would need courage to perform the duties of a king. He was not sure that they believed in the gods.